Hey guys, Brian Stevens over here with the National Real Estate Post and Mortgage Shots. I have Richard Hager, who's an appraiser, but appraiser extraordinaire, who's up in the state of Washington, and he's got a couple of things that he wants to share with you that are affecting not only his state, but I know they're affecting my state. And if it's not where you're at, it certainly is coming to a theater near you. Richard, how are we doing today?
So far, so good, but then it's a Monday, so, it'll get better as the week goes on. How's that?
Hey, listen, let's talk about these two bills that is affecting Washington right now, what the unintended consequences are, and let's have a conversation about what is going to happen to some of the communities that we just live in and we love.
Sure. There's a lot of confusion around here because of the way these laws were written, somewhat passed. One of them, they tried to get past the legislator 13 different times over multiple years. And eventually they found the right combination. But we have law number 1, which is House Bill 1337. And this deals with ADUs, accessory dwelling units, attached or detached. And then we have a different House Bill, 1110, that deals with increased density on lots. So the people up here, whether you're a real estate professional or a person in the neighborhood, there's confusion about those. And they all have bits and pieces, which is why I had to do a whole 3.5-hour class just trying to explain these new laws and the impact. And frankly, when even the real estate professionals, the agents, appraisers, and lenders hear about this, they are, most of them are in horror of, oh my God, when would they do something as stupid as this?
I'm a homeowner. I'm feeling
okay.
This, okay? So I could build an ADU in my backyard, a granny flat, and
sure.
I increase the value of my property. I've got more square footage, and they're going to knock down some of the barriers for me to make this happen. I love this idea. Why don't you?
Oh, no. I'm okay with that. It's a reasonable process for something like that. Being able to put an ADU is attached, a daydo is detached, but I'm okay with doing something like that. But they start off with, most of the cities around here have their own rules and regulations on it. Some say that it has to be attached. Some say it has to be detached. Most of them limit to one accessory dwelling unit per lot, and the owner of the property needs to live on the property because it's an accessory, like a garage, a barn, that sort of thing. But what they've done in these laws is they've changed that, and now the owner doesn't have to live on the property, and you can have 2 accessory dwelling units on a 5,000-foot lot or smaller. So it's gone from being an accessory to a way of creating a triplex on a single-family zone site.
Okay, so let me reboot my scenario. I'm no longer the person putting 2 of these triplexes on my lot, but I'm the neighbor of that. Now, all of a sudden, I've got one neighbor with one house. Now I've got 3 families living in there. I mean, certainly when it comes down to sewage, water, trash, parking, how is that dealt with?
They didn't address it at all. They said you can do that. In fact, that's what we're seeing is if you can put in a new accessory dwelling unit and you're within a half a mile of a bus stop, you don't have to have off-street parking. So and we've got several examples of this in a town called Kirkland, where they went into the backyard, put 2 daydus, detached accessory dwelling units, and there's no off-street parking. So those people are parking in front of their neighbors' houses. And so we have increased parking that's there. And if you have a narrow street, how does the garbage get picked up? How does the snow get cleared off if you're in Spokane or something like that?
Actually,
and none of those were
addressed. How do you deal with the garbage? That's immediate. So you have 3 families. I need 3
trash cans.
Right.
Yeah, and you got to drag them out to the curb, but the curb's all plugged up with cars.
Garbage day!
And they didn't talk about that in the law at all. They just are silent on those things. And when that was brought up, they all kind of look around and whistle, and it goes silent. Give you an example of the town of Spokane. They talked about fire trucks, and they talked to the city council, go, oh, no, we've talked to the fire chief. It's all okay. So some person you may be looking at called up and talked to the fire department and said, hey, what about this new law with all this increased density? And the first thing the chief said is how are we getting the fire trucks down the streets? And we said, didn't they talk to you? And they went, no, nobody talked to the fire department. Nobody talked to the trash haulers about this. The city council and others that have similar laws just said, we did talk to them. They did not. They've been misled as they talk to everybody else out here.
So here's my question. So from an appraiser's perspective, I selfishly would want to put an ADU in my backyard because I think that's going to make my property worth more. Are we seeing it take place? You use Kirkland as an example And by the way, Kirkland is the Kirkland you're thinking of from Costco. That's where it came
Yeah.
from.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
So what are we seeing with values?
Typically, you will see values increase when you have an accessory dwelling unit on the property of some sort. We do see a benefit from that. Sometimes it's equal to the cost of installing it. Sometimes it's a little bit more. So most of the time, an ADU does increase the property value, without a doubt. Then it comes down to we've got a lot of investors trying to buy these places so that they could rent the main house to one and rent the ADU to somebody else. It's a way of getting a duplex into an area zone, single family, without going through the duplexing zoning sort of regulations.
It turns every single family residence into a duplex opportunity, right?
Absolutely, if not a triplex, because the new state law allows 2 ADUs within city limits, all city limits. So it's a way of creating a triplex without telling your neighbors that that's coming.
So one of the numbers that I know is 28.4% of all properties that are purchased by investors. By the end of this year, we're expecting that number to go to 30%. Are we finding more investors coming out of the woodwork because they see more opportunities now? Like, I'm going to go buy this house that would otherwise be owned by somebody who's going to live in it and raise their kids in it.
Sure.
But now investors are coming out and they're seeing the opportunities here, and that's going to disproportionately kind of put our market out of whack, isn't it?
Yes, and you're going to see it. Typically, the most common buyer is an owner-occupant. They're going to buy the house, live in it. Number 2 would be an investor who would buy it to rent it out to a family. And what you're going to see is the investor group become a larger segment. And you're also going to see builder developers become a very large segment, because they're going in Seattle, as an example. They're going in and buying up the smaller houses, let's say $400,000, tearing it down and then replacing it with a new house and 2 ADUs, if not more units than that. So the investors are coming in, they are buying up the first-time home buyers' houses, and so you are seeing a fundamental change in the market, and it'll become larger over the next couple of years.
So why are you advocating for this? Like, why does this matter to you so much?
Well, I'm higher density, because we've got a couple laws going here, but I'm okay with accessory dwelling units. I am okay with being able to do that in certain areas. A couple of things that trigger here is that the owner of the property does not have to live there if they're an accessory dwelling. So it is a clever way of making it a duplex, if not a triplex, where if the owner had to live there, it's better maintenance of the property, better neighbor, if you will, than just renters that are there. So you do get some change. And it's a clever way for these people to bring in multifamily housing in an area where the neighbors might not like it. So I'm against the state government dictating to the cities, you must allow 2 ADUs on every single lot that's zoned for single family. I would rather cities, counties, you decide what's right for your community, not the state dictating this. So that would be my only kind of a complaint, if you will.
I mean, I kind of get that, though. Like, it's always not in my backyard. Like, I get that. But what this is doing, it's kind of running roughshod over that whole idea of not my backyard. Like, to a certain extent, we all have to like give and take a little bit. I get that. But what they're doing is they're giving anybody an opportunity to fundamentally change what a community looks like. I just,
oh, yes.
This like unbelievably transitionally change what that community looks like, and it's going to
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're already seeing it. But what you're also going to see is, let's take a rich neighborhood. The upper price range, multi-million dollars. I don't see anybody tearing those houses down and putting in a new house with 2 daydus in the backyard. It's just not. Bill Gates isn't going to have that happen in his neighborhood. So you're going to see the separation of rich and poor, a little more stratification that I don't think is a good idea, but it should be up to the neighborhood.
You bring up a really great point there. Where this is going to happen is going to disproportionately affect those on the lower rungs of the socioeconomic scales. That's what's
absolutely. Yes, and we've got multiple examples of that. As I appraise a house, I'm down the street, I see a new townhouse there. Ooh, let's click a photo. And when I research it, most of the time, I see a lower cost house, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 being low cost, being purchased by the developers, torn down, and replaced with multiple housing units selling in the $700,000 range. How's that helping the first-time home buyer or middle America? I don't see it.
And I think there is something about, Fannie and Freddie. Like, are they going to write loans? Like, when you have 3 dwellings on a property, like the appraisal and the value of that property and like how that loan is going to go basically omits them from doing it. They'll allow 1, but not 2. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. See, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were set up for single-family lending. Their primary was for a house. That's the whole goal. They expanded it to allow an accessory dwelling unit. So 2. But again, the homeowner lives there. Homeowner's taking care of the place. And you've got a place for mom, or mom keeps me, one way or the other. That's sort of the thing. I don't care. But when you put 2 accessory dwelling units, Fannie Mae goes, we want nothing to do with the loan. So 78% of your secondary market system is gone. And that's one of the problems California is having with 2 accessory dwelling units on a property. You can't get conventional financing for that. There's some bank financing, but not a lot.
I feel like we're glossing over this. That's a really, really big issue. Like this is massive. Like if you have 2 dwellings on your lot, you can't get conventional financing. So that means that you can't sell your house. I looked at these properties out in, there's certain areas, but I know they're up in the hills in Tucson where they gotta port their water in. Imagine losing water. Well, if you have a house that doesn't have water, then you don't have a house at all. And that's kind of the same thing here. It has the same type of effect, right?
It does, because you're going to see a higher strain on the water systems, sewer systems, electrical systems, and streets.
But the same thing. Like if you have 2 properties over there, you can't get financing. Like you can't sell that house.
You can, but now it's seller financing. Cash is fine. Or you're going to go with some bank that has limited financing, in-house financing.
So companies like BlackRock would do really great in this market, but like, Jane and Joe homebuyer are not going to do great in this world.
Right. It's going to be a tough hole for them because they got to go find the financing. And a lot of the agents don't fully understand it. That's why I teach a class in this. Because the agents are out there and they're selling it. And let's say somebody's, putting themselves in a U-Haul van coming up from San Francisco to move to Seattle. And they think their loan's going to go through, slam bang. And then the appraiser goes out and goes, there's 2 ADUs on this property. And so the week of closing, the bank gets my appraisal back and they go, oh my, there's 2 accessory dwelling units. We don't have any funding. We don't have any money for that sort of a loan. Now, all of a sudden, where's a person stopping in Eugene, who's living in a hotel for a week or 2 or 3? It creates a twist that the people who passed this law clearly did not talk to the bankers or the appraisers about this. And that's just one side of that. And the other laws in allowing for even more housing units. So it does create. Now, in the case of those 2 ADUs on the property, we as the appraiser can shift it over to say it's a multifamily property, a triplex. But at that point in time, I have to shift over to a different form. It's a different type of appraisal. My appraisal fee goes from $850 to $1,500, so there's a higher fee there. And often, the buyer has to put a larger down payment. Not so much in the last 6 months, because Fannie Mae's got some flexibility. But it's typically a larger down payment, typically at a higher interest rate. And now I have to figure out what would all 3 of those units rent for. And now that rent income must be sufficient to pay for the mortgage. Does it? I don't know. That's up to the bank to decide. So it creates single family was designed for simple loans, simple process, come in, smile, and you get a 30-year mortgage. When we say it's a triplex or more, it's a whole different process that's there, and there's less financing available.
Well, and I just can't get over, from a personal standpoint, I have my neighbors, I think they run a cult, but like once every couple of weeks, they have like 95 cars on the street, and it changes like everything. It really does. And
yes.
If you have so I live on my court. There's like 9 houses. Say 4 did ADUs or 2 ADUs. Sure. It would permanently change what I love about my community.
No, and that's the key. 67% of housing in America are single family, detached mainly housing, and a certain percentage are attached, like apartments and the like. That's clear. But America has spoken. We got the land spread out and take up more. We're not France in that sort of a scenario. And here we have people going, oh, that's bad. That's bad. We can't have single family. Well, why not? We got the space we want to have, and we choose the neighborhood, whether you want high density in downtown LA Or if you want to go farther and farther out, what's the first thing that Bill Gates would want? More land. He's not looking for an apartment or detached housing to live in. Right. And most of Americans are the same way. We want a place for the swing set in the back for the kids, a sandbox and whatever, that sort of thing. We're not looking for high density crammed. If we were, move to New York, pick your level.